The President. Members, please stand up while the Chief Executive enters the chamber. And I'll call upon the Chief Executive to first address the Council. Mr. President, yesterday I delivered my maiden policy address. In 2019, Hong Kong went through black-led violence, rampant advocates of Hong Kong independence, as well as external forces meddling in Hong Kong's affairs. The national security as well as social stability have been put under threat. We thank the central authorities for rendering support and promulgated the national security law. We have implemented Patriots administering Hong Kong. Hong Kong has moved from instability to stability, and now from stability to prosperity. We have, in general, achieved stability. The Legislative Council is highly efficient. The legislature, the executive, as well as members of the public should all cherish this result that is fought hard for. We should work together to start a new chapter when we enter prosperity from stability. Hong Kong has been plagued by the epidemic for 3 years. We have gone through plights and tribulations. After this government has taken office, we have, based on scientific data, put in place precise anti-epidemic measures in order to fight for the biggest freedom in economic activities and social activities with a minimum cost. This is our central rationale. We should seize the opportunities given to us to address deep-seated issues. We should all come together and move forward. The policy address outlined our plan for the coming 5 years. When it comes to long-term aspects, I think that we should not be restricted by a time frame of 5 years. This policy address belongs to people of Hong Kong. We all share the same common ground and philosophy. We should make sure that the measures will take place. We have the first legislature formed by patriots after we have implemented Patriots administering Hong Kong. They reflect the voices of different quarters and stratum in Hong Kong. They enjoy a good relationship with the executive. This is a very important element in our implementation of Patriots administering Hong Kong. On different occasions, I have talked about how we can implement the principle of Patriots administering Hong Kong to its highest level. I have put in place an exchange session in the antechamber. I hope that through informal as well as formal exchange sessions with legislators, we can work together to enhance our governance efficiency so that when a decision is made, it will be executed. In the consultation for the policy address, I have received views from legislators. My team and I, in the process of putting together the measures in the policy address, have taken on board your views. Say, for example, increasing the amount for elderly healthcare vouchers and the sharing of the vouchers by husband and wife. We also have implemented groundbreaking ideas of measures to compete for enterprises and talents. We have decided to launch various railway and infrastructure and transport networks. I have taken on board the suggestions of legislators. This is a prime example showing that we all work together for the good of Hong Kong and for the well-being of Hong Kong. This is a very important objective. We will work together to build a better Hong Kong and to protect our homes. Measures in the policy address aim at enhancing governance efficiencies. We will resolve livelihood issues. We will work together to achieve harmony and stability. In order to implement these measures, we need the support of legislators. That includes legislative amendments, say, for example, regulation of online-offline crowdfunding activities, streamlining statutory procedures to produce land efficiently. We will set up offices to implement tax concessionary measures. There are also suggestions that are about the creation of posts, say, for example, the Commissioner for Chinese Medicine Development, as well as Commissioner for Industry. There are also new policies, say, for example, the building of light public housing. These legislative exercises, as well as creation of posts, have to be discussed and endorsed in the LegCo. My team and I will give you detailed explanations of our new policies and initiatives. We will answer your questions and listen to your views. We aim to enhance understanding and communication in order to garner your support. The President, members, we have ridden out of the storm of attrition. This is a point when we scale new heights. We need to have a fighting spirit. We have inherent advantages. They have never gone away. We continue to find new strengths. We have gone through tribulations and challenges, and these only made us stronger. We need to build a better Hong Kong. We have to act without losing any time, because we have to move ahead to pave new ways. We have the 14th five-year plan. We see that our country will start a new chapter. Hong Kong is moving from instability to stability to prosperity. We need to work together. I hope that members will support my policy address. We will work together to scale new heights. We will integrate into national development. We will levy on the support of our country. We will enhance our competitiveness. We will work for the economic development of Hong Kong as well as the well-being of Hong Kong people. We'll be happy to answer questions. The Chief Executive will answer questions from members. Members who wish to answer questions, please press the Request to Speak button. I have informed members via the Secretariat that to make best use of the available meeting time such that more members would have the opportunity to put questions to the Chief Executive, 3 minutes will be allowed for asking and answering of each question. The time for asking a question by a member should not exceed 1.5 minutes to allow time for the Chief Executive to give his reply. Questions raised by members should be as concise as possible. Members should not make arguments when asking questions. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Mr. President. First, a good word about the policy address because it is bold and it has a vision and it it is groundbreaking. They have capped the waiting time for at 6 years and set the objective to reduce it to 4.5 years. That is indeed very good. There are many different measures, and it looks like a real policy address. I am going to talk about the Sustainable Development Blueprint for Agriculture and Fishery. It is in line with what we have proposed. I would now ask you to elaborate on the blueprint. How will you integrate it and dovetail it with other blueprints? Otherwise, well, it will remain on the drawing board. For the agriculture park, it was conceived in 2013, and we have never seen anything being delivered. And we need to, you give a priority to agriculture. Well, by the time when the blueprint has materialized, it would have been outdated. So when it comes to manpower as well as communication, would you make sure that there is always something done to achieve the development you promise? In paragraph 59, we have made it very clear that we will formulate a sustainable blueprint for the agriculture and fisheries industry. We will work with the sector to formulate it. That means there will be sufficient consultation and communication. You're most welcome to join. And thanks to Mr. Ho for telling me on a number of occasions that we need to improve efficiency in the agri and fish sector. I thank him for his idea. And we do need to do more. We need to work together. When it comes to taking care of their needs, we need to achieve high quality, value-adding development that is conducive to the development in the agri and fish sector as well as the overall development of Hong Kong. I have had a number of discussions with the Secretary for Environment and Ecology. When it comes to designated areas in the sea, we will make use of certain measures, say for example steel cages, to ensure that the water quality will not be polluted. We have existing policies to accord priority on quality farmland. We need to identify such prime sites for better development of the sector. We need to have further discussions in the formulation of the blueprint. We have a development fund. We need to make good use of the fund to help those in need, to encourage the use of new technologies for better result and better value. I truly believe that there is wisdom in the sector. We need to have thorough discussion to make things happen. President, would you please indulge me? Whatever the new initiative is, and I've already said that with an improvement in the governance systems, that includes capability as well as efficiency. The three come hand in hand. How do we make sure that the three will complement one another? It requires the intervention and instruction and direction of the leader. I am very confident that my team will be proactive and actively make sure that there will be discussion in these three areas.
Mr. Chen Pui-Leung, I thank the Chief Executive for coming up with a policy address that is visionary and as well as pragmatic to map out a blueprint for the future 5 years of Hong Kong, moving from stability to prosperity. My question relates to KPIs. There are 110 KPIs in your policy address for the future work of your government. This is very innovative. Now, among the 110 KPIs, some last for 1 year, some 2, some 5. I'd like to ask the administration whether you will have a mechanism to allow the public to monitor your progress and review the outcome and make appropriate improvements when necessary. Chief Executive, thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. I have got 110 indicators covering different areas. Some are about time, some about quantity, and some are KPIs, key performance indicators, covering both quality and quantity. Now, for KPIs covering both quality and quantity, many of them are on housing. Because in our consultation and receiving views from members, we received the very clear message that the issue closest to the heart of the community is land and housing. And of course, I've also got a number of KPIs on competing for enterprises and talents, as can be seen in the policy address. And we've also got indicators covering different areas. These indicators have a few objectives, one of which is, as mentioned by Mr. Chen, we can monitor the progress. And if the progress is not as expected, we can make immediate improvements with a few considerations. First, whether there are objective factors not foreseen in the beginning and we will intervene to improve the situation. For instance, perhaps it's because of hindrances from some pieces of legislation and amendments are required. We have to find out the reasons for failure to meet the indicators. And if it is because of a lack of efficacy, we have to act at once. And that's why I told the honorable member just now that leaders should intervene at such stages. And then these indicators are important because they can bring about a change in culture. After all, they are undertakings. I am most grateful to my team, including the politically appointees and also the civil service. Many of the indicators have come from my team after engagement and consensus. So you can see that our civil service is very committed and sincere. We all want to get the job done so that the community can feel that this is a pragmatic government that can benefit the community. At the end of the day, how do we monitor the progress of the indicators? I'm sure legislators will do a part in panel meetings when discussing relevant issues. I'm sure these indicators will be reviewed. I'm very confident in my colleagues. In the process of putting together the policy address, I adopt teamwork, and the content reflects the hard work and input of civil servants. Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, President. I recently helped a subdivided unit household to move up to a PRH. As soon as I entered their new flat, the young daughter took me by my hand and led me to the sofa. Mommy told me that her daughter was very happy because she is 9 years old and that's the first time she could sit on a sofa. I was really sad to hear that because sofa is a commonplace piece of furniture at home, but it has become a luxury item. You can see the plight of our grassroots. I'm pleased to see that you have kept the waiting time for PRH, and then you have set the target waiting time at 4.5 years. This is in response to President Xi's aspiration, and also it shows your commitment. Yes, 4.5 years is a progress, but there is some departure from HA's undertaking of 3 years. So will you consider using the Housing Authority's target waiting time of 3 years as your target within your term? Do you think you can further compress the waiting time for PRH flat? to 3 years. Chief Executive. Thank you. Yes, I'm sure we all have feelings when we hear such stories. Myself and my colleagues have visited subdivided unit households. Their accommodation is far from desirable. So we must exhaust all ways and means to improve the environment. According to the long-term housing strategy, we have got demand for PRH for the coming 10 years and is about 300,000 PRH units. Now, 10 years down the road, theoretically speaking, we should have sufficient PRH flats to satisfy the demand, including those who are living in inadequate accommodation. But then, the distribution of flat production is uneven. In the first 5 years, we can only complete 1/3 of the stock, and the second 5 years, 2/3 of the remaining production. We cannot afford to ask these households to wait, living in undesirable accommodation. So I'm very grateful to my colleagues for coming up with this very innovative plan, i.e. the light public housing scheme. The beauty is we'll be able to build flats much faster. For transitional housing, yes, they do help, but flats cannot be produced so quickly because the operators are not professionals. Now the government is going to build the LPH. We have the building methods and also the height and other parameters. We're more professional. We can be more efficient, and even the height can be taller because we use the MIC approach. The standards are close to our public housing. Now, LPH are a simple form of traditional PRH. Now, for those waiting for PRH allocation, one day is one day too long. So many of them have told me that they would like to be allocated flats as soon as possible. The reality is, to build flats for the community, we need land on which we can build housing. In the past, it used to be 4 years for flats to be completed, and for land, for various reasons, it takes time for turning land from primitive nature to spade-ready sites. Now, it takes time for us to amend various procedures, but we should not ask them to wait. For those who are eager to leave subdivided units, 1, 2, 3 days earlier is still preferred. So, with this in mind, I want to give them hope. In the past, it's 6 years. Now we have given the undertaking of 4.5 years, so that at least they have hope. They know that the waiting time is shorter. Of course, the shorter the better, and we will continue to work hard. You ask whether in the long run we can further shorten the waiting time. Now we are doing our utmost. In the coming 5 years, we are confident that 4 years down the road, the waiting time will be 4.5 years. Will there be other ways and means? We will not give up. We'll continue to strive for a better situation, and my colleagues have done their utmost. Now, we should stand united. Now, my initial assessment was 1 + 1 is greater than 2, but it can be greater than 3. So the whole government, the whole construction sector can unite. We can think of different ways to expedite different processes so that we would not just improve the quantity, but the quality as well. Now, I have set a minimum size of 2.26 square meters for newly built flats. Now, the most pressing task now is to improve the quantity, and then we can deal with quality later. Mr. Zhou Chen, Thank you. I thank the Chief Executive for showing this new style of governance to boost confidence. And then we have KPIs to deal with odor from Chunwan waterfront and also new railway projects. And of course, I think we should have a Chunwan North station as well. And we've also got a blueprint for arts development for our young people. And we're going to have a museum for Chinese culture. And I think we must not avoid difficulties. Now, with an industrial accident involving a lift fork at Anderson Road, the mother of the victim asked, so would young people be willing to join the construction sector? Young people are willing to work hard. We have to show them that even skills can help them build a bright future. Chief Executive, yes, industrial accidents are heartrending. And of course, we should all work hard. The government as well as the sector should strive to do better in terms of industrial safety. And we've also already submitted a bill to tackle industrial safety. We hope that violations can be tackled appropriately. Of course, the best scenario is we do not have to enforce the law, or rather punish the offenders. For instance, we will catch robbers after they've committed robberies. And so for industrial safety, we should take a preventive approach. We should build up a safety culture, safety systems, and enhance the awareness and operation in construction sites. I'm sure technology goes a long way in improving construction safety. I understand that technology is being applied in many construction sites. Of course, we can explore further application of such technology. The relevant bureau aside, the Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau takes the initiative to help colleagues to see how technology can be wider applied. As for upward mobility of workers, now we should allow diversity in development. People may be interested in engineering job and other jobs. So in addition to traditional education, we have also got VPET to ensure that there is upward mobility for our workers as well. Mr. Louis Lung. Thank you, President, and good morning, Chief Executive. Starting from 2010, the government has launched a number of draconian measures to suppress property prices. The government said that exceptional means were used to tackle exceptional situation. 10 years have elapsed. We now face uncertainties in our global economic and political situation and also interest rate hikes. We are now at another exceptional time, but then the factors are all reversed compared to what it was 10 years ago. And the property sector is undergoing adjustment. There are no longer speculators in the market. Now, if the property market continue to fall, then 1.2 million homeowners or families would be affected, and our banking sector will be dealt a blow. There is nothing in your policy address to remove the draconian measures. I'm sure you have your considerations. Is it that you have a series of market indicators? Can you share with us your view? Chief Executive, thank you. Mr. Lung, property prices involve a number of factors. It's also a sensitive issue. The government's view is, first, we have to consider the reasons for putting in place these measures and whether the factors back then are still applicable. We will closely monitor the market situation, including the current property prices, the trading volume, and also the sales situation of some new residential developments, Hong Kong's economic situation and external factors. We have a basket of factors to consider. We will monitor the situation in a dynamic manner. It's true that in my policy address, I have no intention to tackle this problem. Thank you.
Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, President. In your policy address, Chief Executive, you have launched a number of aggressive measures to compete for enterprises and talent. I give recognition to that. You said that we have lost about 140,000 people. If you include expat workers, conservatively speaking, we have lost about 200 to 300,000 people. Well, let me be your red team. Let me be the devil's advocate. In relation to refunding of extra stamp duty of talents who come from outside Hong Kong after they have become a permanent residents, well, they will have to first pay the extra stamp duty, live here for 7 years, become permanent residents before they apply for a refund. It seems that you will have to pay first, get a refund later. So this will dampen the effectiveness of your admissions schemes. So, well, there is time value for money. The purchasing power 7 years down the line is very different from the purchasing power now. So why don't you consider flexibility to waive extra stamp duty for this group of people? If they sell the flat before they become a permanent resident, then they will be required to pay the extra stamp duty. I understand that you have concerns about such relaxations, that it will adversely affect our market. But when we have a brain drain, there's something that we need to do. You have used more than your allowed time. Mr. Wong, I thank you for using the mentality of a red team to criticize our policy. Well, let me tell you what the discussion of our own red team is. Our red team says that we should try to compete for talent, and we should try to get them to take root in Hong Kong. If that is the case, then they should have the same treatment as any other permanent resident. That's the view of the red team. There is another view. So aren't you scared that people will use that to our advantage for speculation? If that is the case, that there will be more speculative activities. So after considering all these views, we have decided a measure that will strike the balance. We send a very clear message to overseas talents that we would like to get them to come to Hong Kong to stay. So if you meet the requirements and become a permanent resident, then you'll be part of the family. And we have also prevented speculation. As you all know that the market is sensitive. The purpose of the policy is to retain talent. It's not a housing policy. So that's the conclusion of our red team. Mr. Lam San Keung, I thank you for your policy address. You are not scared of smearing and allegations of collusion. And I also thank you for listening to views of the legal sector, for exploring opportunities in the Greater Bay Area, and to attract maritime professionals, as well as to set up a committee to promote legal education. I have a question for you. The development of the legal sector, just like innovation, we need innovative ideas. We need to keep abreast with the time. However, we have not seen any changes in the operation of our law here. Well, in other common law jurisdiction, lawyers can get their firm listed. So the operation of the legal sector cannot make good use of the opportunities posed by national development. So would the government consider providing subsidy and to work with the legal sector in order to train more professionals, in order to enhance the effectiveness of law firms, so that they can seize the opportunities given by Belt and Road as well as other emerging industries? I thank you for your bright ideas. Just now, you asked a question. Before you do that, you talk about collusion. That is the words used by external forces trying to stir up trouble. We have to fight against these allegations. I bring the whole society together. We work together, regardless of your affiliation and your views. We share the common goal. As long as you advocate one country, two systems principle, and you uphold the basic law, then you can make your contribution to our development. That is something mentioned in the important speech by the presidency on the 1st of July. The allegations that there is collusion is something bad. We will always fight against such allegations. Different sectors should work together to resolve the issues and problems. I have floated measures on housing and housing land, and as long as someone upholds the one country, two systems principle and the basic law, you're most welcome to make your contribution. You talk about initiatives to help the development of the legal sector, the promotion of the spirit of the rule of law. And to give more opportunities for legal sector practitioners to shine. We have 3 law schools and 2 legal professional bodies. They're all doing their work. The Secretary for Justice of course is concerned about the development of the legal sector, and the Secretary for Justice is a very experienced advocate, so we can have further discussions. Miss Lillian Kwok, I thank the Chief Executive and his team for listening to the different voices and views. This is a policy address for the people. It has implemented what President Xi said, that is in terms of the 4 hopes. And in paragraph 86, you talk about mental health. This is very important to getting a sense of gain. So I fully identified with your idea, and I strongly support your suggestion. But as we all know, that when it comes to psychiatrists as well as psychologists, there is acute shortage. There is not enough supply of services to meet demand. I am a teacher, and I am also a practitioner in social work. There are indeed a lot of people who need counseling service, but there is inadequate supply. There is a 9-year-old student and a 22-year-old who have lost their lives. There are professional training courses. They have been training professionals to provide psychological services. Would you consider putting in place a system to allow these professionals to get the qualification they need to play their role, so that they will provide better service in terms of mental health for Hong Kong people? Chief Executive, just now you have made a suggestion. I said that Hong Kong people should work together for the good and development of Hong Kong. Your suggestion is fully in line with that. If we make our contribution from our respective profession and expertise, then we will be able to achieve more. 1 plus 1 will become more. So certainly, I will consider the suggestion. In my policy address, I talked about promotion of mental health. Well, we will provide more resources for psychiatric nurses so that they can work together with schools and social workers. So they can provide immediate services, say counseling service, and if necessary, additional care service for them. The goal is to bring everything together to provide assistance needed by those in need. Mr. Ma Fong Kwok. Thank you. This is the first policy address of the government. They have floated a number of proactive measures, say, for example, management of civil service, housing and land. They have introduced some groundbreaking measures. In terms of culture, well, there is a 10-year blueprint. There will be 19 museums. I would like to say that it's been 25 years since the reunification. It's an important event in our history. This is also important in terms of GBA development. Well, there has been ideas of a reunification museum that will tell a true story of what happened. And there has always been a suggestion about a literary museum. That literature is very important to culture. It is a very important part of cultural development. A decade ago, a group of petitioners sent a petition to the government for the building of a literary museum. Some of those signatories have passed away. So will you be able to materialize the literary museum after all these years? I advocate plurality in terms of cultural development. We need to work together. You can't just rely on the government. You have made some suggestions of facilities that would help us remember history. That is very important. Next to the means, my view is that there can be many different ways. There are successful examples of initiatives taken up by the community. And if it is something that can be better done and delivered by the government, of course we will do it. Literary museum is very important because literature represents the quality of its people. This will nourish our mind and our spirit. This will improve the quality of the people as a whole. So we will see what we can do to maximize the effectiveness. Mr. Stephen Wong, I'm glad to see in the policy address that there are visionary and aggressive policies to address different problems. This brings hope and confidence. There are a lot of issues that I've been looking into, and they've been covered by the policy address. There are indicators in relation to digital development. Say for example, the number of the time it takes for a site to become spade ready will be reduced from 13 years to 7 years. I really appreciate your work, But in order to achieve these aggressive KPIs, apart from effectiveness in the government, we need the support of the community. I'd like to ask the Chief Executive, how will he bring the society together so that everyone will work together to materialize the various measures set out in the policy address?
Chief Executive, thank you. I think Mr. Wong has hit the nail on his head. There are many measures in the policy address which are the outcome of hard work on the part of myself and my civil servant colleagues. We have fostered consensus. We agree to implement the measures in the policy address. I want to thank my colleagues here as well as civil servants watching this question time live in their offices. Yes, government efforts alone is not enough. In my many replies, I've said that we should mobilize the whole society so that we work together. And this is in President Xi's important speech on the 1st of July. We must have a bold and fighting spirit, and we must work together and seek common grounds. And I invite everyone to work with the government to implement what's in the policy address. We need the hard work and efforts of different sectors of society. For housing and infrastructure, we rely on market forces. We rely on workers, developers, designers, engineers, architects. All should be involved. We hope to build a caring society. We want to take care of the carers. We should know and respect the needs of carers. Financial subsidy aside, we should also give them psychological support so that we can share the joys and pains and experience, and hold society together. Will be able to achieve more. And then we will be able to do what we plan to do even faster than what we plan to do it. Dr. Dennis Lam. Thank you, President. Chief Executive, you have mapped out the blueprint for Hong Kong in the policy address, and you have proposed specific measures for resolving deep-rooted issues in Hong Kong. You mentioned registration of drugs and appliances. I welcome your suggestion to allow drugs manufactured in the mainland to be registered in Hong Kong. And you would also expand the scope so that local drugs can also be registered on the mainland so that Hong Kong and the mainland can share common drugs. Now, for new pharmaceutical products, we only provide registration. We do not have any approval. Will we set up an authority in Hong Kong for approval of new drugs? Will we work together with the National Medical Products Administration so that drugs approved in Hong Kong are also be registered in the mainland so that we can encourage drug manufacturers to come to Hong Kong for R&D activities? Can we set up our own authority for medical products approval? Chief Executive, thank you. I mentioned this in my policy address because on one occasion I was grateful to have input from Dr. Lam. And then I am with you on many of your suggestions. I think we should look at three perspectives. First, our suggestion is, regardless of the place of manufacture, so long as they satisfy our standards, then the pharmaceutical products can be used in both places, and they must be organization They must be approved by organizations recognized at WHO, and then it will be perfectly safe. And we want to expand the scope of the system to a few more places, among which is the mainland, and Thailand is another place. And I'm sure Professor Low will explain to Council other places under consideration. And then, as said by Dr. Lam, can we encourage large pharmaceutical manufacturers to come to Hong Kong to set up their base? That's an excellent suggestion. But I've said that in drafting the policy address, I want to have maximum gain for Hong Kong within the shortest period of time. We should achieve the most during the shortest period of time. Now we have measures to compete for enterprises, for tenants, and enterprises that can benefit Hong Kong to set up their base here. So, in the long run, what Dr. Lam has painted for us is a very rosy picture. I would not rule that out. But for the most pressing task now, if we can do this, we've already added a lot of value for Hong Kong. Dr. Tan Yue Tiao. Thank you, President, Chief Executive. The policy address said that we should fight for the well-being and the development of Hong Kong. And we have vision, and there is also innovation in the policy address, and there are also breakthrough measures to deal with deep-rooted problems in Hong Kong. I really appreciate the policy address. The policy has got a number of measures to strengthen our position as a financial center, such as strengthening renminbi business and also a stock connect and also the use of INT. My question is, these initiatives should be implemented apart from the financial services department and bureau in the government. I think we should also consider financial institutions, and I think there's not much passage devoted to this area in the policy address. So I would like to know whether we will have more supporting measure for financial institutions for INT products. Can we give flexibility in regulation? Can there be tax concessions? And what about support or subsidies for small and medium-sized financial institutions for upgrading and transformation, and also the promotion of green finance? Chief Executive, thank you very much for your question. In all areas, we have got elements mentioned by Dr. Tan just now. Take finance. Now we have talked about this tax concessions for family offices in Hong Kong. We have a process of removing the red tape and restrictions. In terms of implementation, I will leave it to the relevant directors of bureau to tackle the relevant problems. After all, for the financial sector, we need people in the know to do it. And then for some of the regulatory measures, if they're not needed, they can be removed. But then we have to ensure that the regulation of the financial services sector is in alignment with international standards. Under this premises, if there are restrictions that can be removed, they can be considered. Just to take an example, for some listing companies, we can relax some of the rules. For technology companies, for instance, there will be requirements on the asset value and also operation the relevant Bureau of Director of Bureau and regulators involved will consider these aspects so as to further enhance our competitiveness in the financial services sector. Thank you. Dr. Hui Lee. Thank you, President. Good morning, Chief Executive. Myself and my team started 2 studies on innovation and technology. We looked into the commercialization of R&D results and also success cases in this area. And then we have made a number of suggestions in the introduction of top talents and also enterprises in Hong Kong. I thank the Chief Executive for taking on board some of our suggestions. I'm pleased to see that the government has been proactive and innovative in promoting INT, in particular in the promotion of commercialization of R&D outcomes. The government is very committed. Now there will be a $10 billion research, academic and industry sectors 1+ scheme. I'd like to ask the administration how you can ensure that the whole scheme is demand-led, and how can you work with the value chain in the mainland so that we can together promote the commercialization of R&D outcomes. President, the proposal or the question by Dr. Lee is a very valid one. Now, in our policy address, the first point is to improve our INT ecology. We should consider how we integrate with the mainland and the GBA so that the ecology and also the value chain can scale new height. We have this race plus scheme. We have a vetting panel of experts to vet those schemes to see whether they have potential. So first, there must be a vetting process. And in the process, we will consider the factors raised by Mr. Lee or Dr. Lee. And we have got 2 stages. First, the product must be first available, and then it must be commercialized, and whether it suits the needs of the market. And then there is also a matching arrangement. In other words, there are already investors who think that the scheme, if successful, has a market, and that there can be mass production of the R&D outcomes. So this is what Dr. Lee meant by demand-led. And for integration with the GBA, I think this is the area I have least worry about, because with different cities of the GBA, we have this consensus to develop different areas of INT together. So extension of the production chain in the mainland is going to be easy from what I gather, because we already have a consensus. We used to do well in R&D, but for commercialization, we have to build up and nurture this ecology so that we can make a success in commercialization. Mr. Michael Tian, thank you, Chief Executive. You have exceeded my expectations because there are KPIs, you have timetables, you have all sorts of indicators. But most disappointing of all, there is no mention of 0+0 quarantine arrangement and our blueprint or roadmap for normalcy. Now, you mentioned MICE and also major events. But to a large extent, we rely on inbound travelers, and our anti-epidemic measure is a non-starter for them. Now, you said that we will not lie flat. We will reduce critical cases. We will protect high-risk groups and to reduce deaths, etc. Now, from 0+3 to 0+0, we do not lie flat because a PCR test is required and after arrival in Hong Kong and also fully vaccinated. Now, since the introduction of 0+3 on the 26th of September, well, the number of cases fell from 84 to 51. Total number of hospitalizations dropped from 2,000 to 1,800. That goes to show that our healthcare system is safe and sound, and even 3,000 cases per day is not a problem. Mr. Michael Tian, please come to your question.
Well, for visitors to come here and subject to restrictions of 3 days, imagine you are that visitor. Would you choose this city after you have landed? Please stop, Mr. Tian. Chief Executive. I do know what you mean, Mr. Tian. My stance is very clear in this regard, and so is yours. You are a very strong advocate. So whether you continue with your question or not, I still understand what you're driving at. I understand that is close to everyone's heart. We want to make Hong Kong very attractive to visitors. We share the same view. But what we are different is that you need to consider fewer factors than I do. I don't want to chop and change once a decision is made. What I consider is that whether the healthcare system will not be subject to any challenges if we go down this path. A number of professionals and experts have said things in their own respective expertise. I respect that, but sometimes they go beyond their expertise. Of course, I will listen to them. I will listen to them, like you said, Mr. Tian. My direction is clear. The direction will not change, so it's incorrect to say that I don't have a roadmap. What I can't tell you now is what we will do next month. Professor Liang Wanlian is a recognized expert. He said that given the science we know now, no one will be able to tell what will happen. So I am minded to maximize freedom. That's why I have implemented 3+4, 0+3, and the use of red and yellow code, and I would not have relaxed social distancing measures. My direction is very clear, and that is something that I have been doing. And I send out a very clear message that I do not want to change my path. I will, of course, take into account our economic development needs and other things as well. They are all very important. I want to explain to everyone that we have this direction, as stated in a policy address, that we want to create the greatest room for people's livelihood and economic activities. Of course, there are events that we all want to see taking place in Hong Kong, because these events will showcase Hong Kong's vibrancy and attractiveness. So even though there are still anti-epidemic measures in place, we will formulate targeted measures to enable these events to take place. But please understand that the government will have to take more factors into account. Mr. Gary Zhang, Thank you. I really appreciate the measures set out in the policy address. There are medium and long-term measures. As the chief executive said, in the past few years, Hong Kong has been plagued by social unrest as well as the epidemic. There is low morale. The policy address gives us a chance to start again. Well, President Xi has said that Hong Kong is the home of a lot of people. Well, when young people thrive, then Hong Kong will prosper. What assistance will you render to those who've been arrested in 2019 and 2020 so that they can reintegrate into our society again? We have the rule of law. We have to be responsible for our deeds. If we undermine the rule of law, it will give rise to numerous problems. If someone has been sanctioned under the law, we need to give them the best help to reintegrate and to become part of society again. That's something that we have been saying. Well, the Correctional Services Department have put in place rehabilitation programs. The program started even when once incarcerated. There are training courses to train up the inmate skills. And if the person would like to take up study again, then assistance will be rendered. Anyone, as long as, just like what I said before, as long as they support one country, two systems, as long as they uphold the laws of Hong Kong and the basic law, then they are part of our society. And that is clearly set out. Everyone's responsible for their own actions. Otherwise, our society will be plunged into chaos. You don't have to look at the light. You can run the red light. You don't have to be responsible if you cause an accident. We all have to abide by the rules. We have to be responsible for our actions. And once you have borne your consequences, then we will help you to reintegrate. Ms. Jan Hoi-Yan, I thank the Chief Executive for putting in the effort to formulate the policy address, and there are improvements to the elderly healthcare voucher and private-public healthcare partnership. But what I'd like to say that a major inadequacy of our healthcare is public dental service. Lots of elderly people spend hours waiting just to receive a service of a tooth extraction. For students' dental service, it only lasts till they are primary 6. Poor dental hygiene will cause other problems, say for example gastrointestinal problems. Will this government devote more resources to improve dental services? Say for example extending the student dental service to all students studying, and to improve dental service for elderly people so that young people and elderly people will have a good set of teeth so that they can feel a sense of happiness, and they will not be shy to show you their teeth when they smile. Well, every time I have an opportunity to see your smile, I really appreciate your good set of teeth. When it comes to our dental service, we need to have a long in-depth study into how we can improve matters. We have a task force in charge of this area. It will look at the issues mentioned by you. I agree that we target symptomatic problems, dental problems, say for example toothache. When it comes to maintaining dental health, we target students. And as to what we can do in other areas, well, there are programs under the Community Care Fund. These programs help the underprivileged. And there is additional dental services available. I think that we need to conduct studies as to what more we can do. So this task force on dental service will look at these issues. And they will look at the possibility of expanding the scope of service and how it can be done. The task force will follow up on this issue, and Ms. Chan, you're most welcome to voice your views for our consideration. Ms. Lam So Wai, thank you. I thank the Chief Executive for giving us a visionary policy address that feels the pulse of the community. I am from Southeast New Territories. I'm happy to hear something about Area 137 of Cheung Kwan O. Well, when the projects are completed, there will be other problems. By 2030, there will be about 50,000 units accommodating about 100,000 people. So there will be pressure on the transportation network. Some members of the public are concerned that it may be like Lohans Park. They will have to survive for 10 years before they see some infrastructure. Will the government put in place infrastructure before population intake? Will they improve transportation network between Cheung Kwan O and other areas? Would you consider a fourth cross harbor tunnel from Cheung Kwan O? This is to alleviate the pressure on Cheung Kwan O. This will also alleviate problems and address the concerns of members who will move into Area 137. If you read subparagraph 3 of paragraph 76 of the policy address, you will know that there is a plan to build a tunnel to dovetail the development in Area 137. This proposal addresses the problems you've just outlined. The purpose of our project is to put in place infrastructure in order to create capacity. In our design of highway as well as railway, we need to consider a myriad of factors that are complicated. If we need to make changes of a road or a railway line, we need to consider many factors. We consider the alignment, the connection. We need to thoroughly consider all factors and carry out in-depth studies. Of course, we will listen to your views. We will consider all the suggestions and comments we have received. I agree with the rationale of the professional team because they are very experienced. Well, it is difficult to resolve a problem, say for example, problem of congestion after a road has been put in place. So we need to consider all the different factors in the planning of our road network. Say for example, connections, alignment, and whether it's possible to achieve maximum benefit. Mr. Junis Ho. Well, this is your maiden policy address. I told the press that I would give you 70 marks because it is a very pragmatic and down-to-earth one. You boldly set down 110 KPIs. and 82 and 107, you mention in particular about the promotion of national security and to enhance the awareness of 11,000 students. You should have scored 90. I dock 20 points from you because in paragraph 13 you only gloss over Article 23, and in the 110 KPI there is no timetable for Article 23, which is an important task. Why don't you give a timeline and a KPI for Article 23?
Chief Executive. Thank you, President. Thank you, Dr. Ho. In fact, I share your view on this point, and that is the importance of national security, the importance of legislate on Article 23 and to do it as soon as possible, because it is our constitutional duty enshrined in the Basic Law for us to implement Article 23. And in the National Security Law, it is clearly stated that we should legislate to implement Article 23 as soon as possible. The reason why I say in the policy address that we are doing the preparation work, because I don't want to backtrack. I don't want to remedy now in mainland language. A piece of legislation must be useful and appropriate. And I've said time and again that we must ensure that the legislation can deal with extreme circumstances. Well, back in 2003, we were happy with the provisions because back then the threats to national security was not what it is now. The foes, the enemies of the country were different. Now they use color revolution, they use spies, they use infiltration. So we must come up with the best means in order to ward off all these threats. It's really more important to make haste than to do it well. I agree with you on one point, but I also want the piece of legislation to be able to deal with the most extreme circumstances. Now, I am doing a very extensive legal study because we all have our own blind spots. I'm sure we all have blind spots. We must work on our blind spots. The reason why I have a red team, we have to review all relevant legislation in other parts of the world for protecting national security. I'll be more confident if we have reviewed all red spots. We have blind spots. We have to ensure that we have a piece of legislation that is fit for purpose and useful. Now, in the past, there wasn't as much fake news. Back then, fake news was not used as a tool, and personal privacy is no longer what it was back then. So we have to ensure that we have a piece of legislation that can really protect us. I need an extremely high, a piece of legislation with extremely high safety coefficient. We have to be able to tackle unimaginable threats to national security. And I want this legislation to be able to prevent all threats. We should be able to ward off all possible attacks and threats. That is in the interest of all parties. So I have to ensure that we can have a piece of legislation done as soon as possible, but it must be able to fulfill its purpose. Hopefully, we will have more time to explore this situation or this issue, and we look forward to more input from Dr. Ho so that we can have Article 23 local legislation really able to protect national security. Mr. Dominic Lee, I want to thank Mr. John Lee His maiden policy address is very pragmatic, and he has taken on board many suggestions from the New People's Party. Now, we have got civil service reform suggestions, and I'm grateful to the Chief Executive for mentioning in the policy address that he's going to improve the civil service management system, and he is going to strengthen the award and punishment system. And according to the policy address, for officers whose performance remains persistently substandard despite supervision and assistance, their appointment should be terminated in a timely manner. However, the PA is silent on the mechanism. In fact, we have a mechanism to terminate civil servants. Is that the procedures are long and there is no incentive for supervisors to go down this route, and as a result, very, very few civil servants have been terminated so far. So, Chief Executive, how are you going to implement your proposal in the policy to terminate civil servants that are persistently performing in a substandard manner without dealing a blow to the morale of the civil service? Chief Executive, in fact, we already have rewards and punishments built in our current system. It's just that the whole procedures are very timely and cumbersome. So if someone who is not up to the job is still in the civil service, then the whole community stands to lose, because we have a limited number of civil servant posts, and then we don't know that a certain civil servant is incompetent, and we have let down the public. So we have a system with clear rewards and punishments. But then the majority of our civil servants are of very high caliber, and the performance of our civil service have been well recognized, and they are a clean and also efficient civil service. We are only talking about a minority of black sheep. Still, they will affect us because some of them may procrastinate, and as a result, my KPIs may not be attained in time. So, for details, I'm sure the relevant panel will be given a briefing. I want to have a system that is fair and transparent to all, with very clear rules. So even though we want to be result-oriented, we must ensure due procedures. So we want a fair and open system with clear rewards and punishments. In fact, most civil servants have vision and ambition and committed. And in this policy address exercise, they have been very proactive and they are heavily involved. Mr. Jimmy Ng, I want to thank the Chief Executive for his significance attached to reindustrialization and INT. And then there will be Commissioner for Industry to ensure reindustrialization. In fact, we want the Commissioner and the INT department to help industries to thrive, and our resources should be able to go across the border. And then all the measures and concessions should be expanded to Hong Kong enterprises operated on the mainland. And I'd like to ask whether in setting out the duties and responsibilities of the Commissioner, you will take this into account. Thank you. Chief Executive. In forming the terms of reference for the Commissioner for Industry, I have what Mr. Jimmy said just now in mind. I fully recognize the important contribution made by the industrial sector, because they also provide jobs for our workers. I want to thank the different participants in our industries for their contribution. How can we promote reindustrialization. We will do so by application of technology and innovation. Now we intend to increase the number of production lines by 4 times from about 30 at present to over 130 in 5 years. So the commissioner will have to overcome hurdles, not just those mentioned by Mr. Jimmy Ng. And if we can have a commissioner dedicated to this area, then there will be more measures. And then for problems, we can deal with them in a focused manner. And that's why we have to set up the system first. When we have the system, then we can have capability and also efficacy. Now, because if we do not have the right system, then today I am in this Q&A session with you. Tomorrow I may have to go to different meetings, and if there is no dedicated personnel to deal with a problem, then it cannot be efficient. As I said, the industry has got all the wisdom. And in my communication with the sector, I asked them to give me a checklist, and I will see what is feasible, what is not on the checklist. This is my approach. And I have followed your checklist in drafting the policy address. There are things that can be implemented now, and some may have to wait, and some can be done now. And this is my concept and rationale behind the policy address. If we have a commissioner for industry, I'm sure we can do better in terms of reindustrialization. Mr. Lee Chun-keung, I thank the Chief Executive for taking on board some of the suggestions from the Liberal Party so that the PA is more comprehensive. Some say that we do not have enough measures in the PA to fill up our talent gap. I beg to differ. In Hong Kong, what is most important is opportunities. I praise the PA because it has got lots of policies to enhance attractiveness. Many middle-class families have to face higher interest rates and mortgage payment, higher inflation, and also problem of job security. Their burden is heavy. So long-term measures may not be able to address their immediate difficulties. So what measures do you have to help middle-class families in Hong Kong? Chief Executive, thank you. We have a whole series of services available in the community to support the middle class. In terms of housing, we have a housing ladder trying to satisfy the different needs and affordability of people in the community. So whether we talk about home ownership schemes and starter homes, they are there to take care of the housing needs of the middle class. Whether we talk about the policy address or the annual budget, we have plenty of measures to help the middle class, such as tax rebate, rates rebate, and also tax concessions for the middle class. They are in our mind. And then healthcare, education, and all sorts of services take care of everyone in Hong Kong. In particular, we do care for the needs of the middle class. We are consistent. We have specific measures to help the disadvantaged. But when it comes to education, housing, and healthcare, we want the measures to take care of the interests of everyone in society. Apart from the policy address, there will be considerations in our budget. Everyone is part of the family in Hong Kong. Of course, different people may be supported by different measures. And if there is anything more I can do, I'm all ears, and things that are feasible and appropriate can be considered. The last question, Mr. Chen Yong or Ms. Chen Yuming.
I thank the Chief Executive for addressing various issues in his policy address. There is a clear direction set down. He said that the northern metropolis has its advantage. It goes beyond boundaries. And you have also talked about talent attraction measures, say for example, top talent admission scheme. In the past, there are some kinds of a permit that allow people to go and work in Shenzhen. So when we move towards a prosperity, we see more restrictions for people to work on the mainland. So I'd like to ask the Chief Executive, would he consider provide facilitating measures in the form of a permit for those working in Shenzhen or the Greater Bay Area? Ms. Chen talked about a vision of free flow of people. We actually have a lot of room. The room for working in different places has been expanded because of technology. In other places, there are streamlined measures to go to a different place. But under the one country, two system, we may be able to do that. Well, in the past, there are people who advocate alienating ourselves from the mainland, but those advocacies have disappeared. We now have patriots administering Hong Kong. So that is definitely in my mind. What we can do in the immediate future is the Hong Kong Shenzhen Technology Park, the River Loop. We have one zone, two parks. We can have dedicated measures to facilitate people working there, because the River Loop itself is in close proximity to both places. We can consider ways to make it easier for people to travel. I will explore the possibilities within the laws of Hong Kong with mainland authorities. Well, as you know that for the GBA, there are laws and rules of 3 places. I have mentioned in my policy address that we hope in terms of people flow to remove barriers with the mainland. The Chief Executive's question and answer session ends. The Chief Executive will now leave the chamber. Will members please stand up? The meeting is adjourned. We will resume at 11 o'clock Wednesday on the 26th of October.